Just over 2 years after the Titan submersible imploded, there's a new report from the US Coast Guard, and it reveals a toxic workplace culture at OceanGate was a factor, and that it used intimidation tactics to evade regulatory scrutiny. The report lists the primary cause of the implosion as the failure to follow established engineering protocols for safety, testing, and maintenance of their submersible, hence the sudden catastrophic implosion of the carbon fibre hull. It also concludes that OceanGate founder Stockton Rush completely ignored vital inspection data analyses and preventative maintenance procedures, culminating in a catastrophic event. Here's our report on Stockton Rush, and analysis will follow.
Hi, my name is Stockton Rush. I'm the CEO and founder of OceanGate. Let's take a look at Titan.
Stockton Rush showed off his sub to Canadian reporters. It had already made a handful of trips down to the Titanic, and Rush was in confident mood.
And it's meant for a 16-year-old to throw it around, and super durable. We keep a couple of spares on board just in case.
And this is the Titan now, nothing more than debris recovered from the ocean floor. Among the wreckage, the remains of the 5 people aboard its final voyage, including 2 billionaires, 58-year-old Hamish Harding and 48-year-old Shahzada Dawood, accompanied by his 19-year-old son Suleiman, whose mother had given him her place on the sub.
So it was supposed to be Shahzada and I going down, but then I stepped back and gave the space to Suleiman because he really wanted to go.
Also on board, the 77-year-old explorer Paul-Henri Naguiolet, and of course 61-year-old Rush himself, who was piloting the sub. Descended from 2 of America's founding fathers, Richard Stockton and Benjamin Rush, he had high ambitions. His dream of becoming an astronaut, perhaps even one of the first people on Mars, was ended by his poor eyesight. He turned his attention to the deep sea instead, pioneering private ocean exploration. A trip on board his Titan submersible would cost $250,000, taking the super-rich to the wreckage of the Titanic. That was the supposedly unsinkable ship, at the time the world's largest, which hit an iceberg on its maiden voyage in 1912. The wreckage lies in a remote part of the North Atlantic, around 700 kilometers off the coast of Newfoundland, Canada, and about 2,000 kilometers from its ultimate destination, New York. Clients take an 8-day trip, setting sail from the Canadian coast on a chartered support ship, and from there, depending on the weather, 4 of the days would be used to dive to the Titanic. The wreckage lies almost 4 kilometers below the surface, well below the distance a person, a military submarine, or even a whale can dive to. Such a depth requires an incredibly well-designed machine to withstand the pressure, about 380 times the pressure we experience on the surface, equivalent to having the Eiffel Tower pressing down on it. Deep-sea experts warned that Stockton Rush had avoided certifying the craft because of numerous flaws.
There are only 10 vehicles in the whole world that can go 4,000 meters or deeper, and all of them are certified, except the Titan.
The body was mostly made from carbon fibre. Rush claimed he had bought it from Boeing at a big discount because it was past its shelf life for use in airplanes, something not recommended by experts, including the Hollywood director James Cameron, who has dived down to the Titanic wreckage 30 times in a self-designed sub.
So we always understood that this was the wrong material for submersible hulls because with each pressure cycle, you can have progressive damage. So it's quite insidious because you may have a number of successful dives, which is what happened here, and then have it fail later.
And the nose cone was made from titanium, despite expert advice not to mix the 2 materials.
I'd like to be remembered as an innovator. I think it was General MacArthur said, "You're remembered for the rules you break." And I've broken some rules to make this. I think I've broken them with logic and good engineering behind me. The carbon fiber and titanium, there's a rule you don't do that. Well, I did.
According to a former employee who sued the company, the single window in the craft was only rated to 1,300 meters, around a third of the depth necessary to reach the shipwreck. Passengers were locked in by 18 bolts, hand-tightened by someone on the outside of the vehicle.
It seems like a lot of the way you made this is by taking off-the-shelf parts and sort of MacGyvering them together.
Yeah, pretty much.
Does that not raise anybody's eyebrows in the industry?
Oh yeah. Oh yeah. Yeah, no, I'm definitely an outlier. There were a lot of rules out there that didn't make engineering sense to me.
There's certain things that you want to be buttoned down, and that's the pressure vessel. Once the pressure vessel is, you're certain it's not going to collapse on everybody, everything else can fail.
Mr. Rush had been warned his submarine was unsafe and could damage the reputation of the entire field of deep-sea exploration. In an email exchange with Rob McCallum, a leading deep-sea expert, Mr. Rush wrote that he had grown tired of industry players who tried to use a safety argument to stop innovation. We have heard the baseless cries of, "You are going to kill someone," way too often. I take this as a serious personal insult. Mr. McCallum replied, "I think you are potentially placing yourself and your clients in a dangerous dynamic. Ironically, in your race to the Titanic, you are mirroring that famous catch cry, 'She is unsinkable.'" But Stockton Rush pressed on regardless, ending in a tragedy we now know the story of all too well. Well, earlier we spoke to John Copley, an eminent marine biologist who 10 years ago descended 5,000 meters into the Caribbean Sea on a scientific expedition. That's considerably deeper than the Titanic. We asked him how he would explain what happened to the Titan.
What happened to the Titan submersible is unprecedented. There's never before been a deep diving submersible that has imploded during a dive. And these vehicles are not new, okay? The first vehicle that carried people into the deep ocean did so nearly a century ago, in 1930. And over those many decades, these kinds of vehicles have taken far more people into the depths of the ocean than the number of people who've ever been into space. And no vehicle has ever imploded before. So it was a completely unprecedented incident. The investigation that's being led by the Coast Guard will now have to establish exactly what happened. And there are certainly 3 areas that they will be investigating. What was different about the Titan, first of all, is its shape. So most of the vehicles that carry people into the deep ocean, the part that carries the people is a sphere, because that round shape means that the pressure is spread evenly around the hull, which is the best shape for pressure. But the Titan was different. For the Titan, they split the sphere in half and inserted a tube in between the 2 halves to make more room for more people, because most of these vehicles only carry 2 or 3 people, and to remain as a sphere and carry more people, the sphere has to get bigger and bigger, and that makes it too big and too heavy to get on and off of a ship. So the Titan had a different shape, but that said, there is one vehicle in history that had that kind of tube shape that did go to these depths, but its hull was made out of aluminium. So as well as shape, they'll also be investigating the materials that the hull was made of. And that middle tube of the Titan's hull was made out of carbon fiber, which has never been used before for the hull of a deep diving submersible. So there'll be a lot of investigation around what happened to that material and whether that was what failed, but also the joins, how the different parts of the hull were joined together. So you've got the 2 hemispheres made of titanium on either end. You've got the carbon fiber tube. The joins between them are really crucial at withstanding pressure. And again, the Titan was different because one of those joins effectively had to be opened up on the front end every time just to get people in and out. Normally there's a separate hatch for people to go in and out of these vehicles. So again, the design was different. So all those places where the design was different will be what the teams will be investigating to understand why it imploded, because that has never happened before.